And good morning, colleagues. Oh, the gang's all here. Ian, you are the light of our lives when we see you. Mate, how are you? Good morning. Have I got you?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just a bit of a delay. And yeah, no, I'm fine. Thank you. I'm delighted to see you guys as well. Yeah, hello, everyone.
Good
Great
morning.
to be here.
And can I say,
Been
Ian,
a good week.
that is a magisterial beard, brother.
It's getting a bit long and crazy, but I kind of like it that way as well.
Oh, look, it's getting very, very exciting. And look, colleagues, I'm thrilled to see you all. Beautiful. Rachel's in. We're thrilled to see Rachel. Beautiful. Jilly's in. That's magnificent. And Jules, how you going, Jules? Oh, sound, Angel.
Good, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, you're the best. Nice lipstick choice, Dal. Very subtle. Very nice. That's nice.
Thank you.
That's a nice colour. And Carly, we've had fun this week, haven't we, mate?
Oh, we've had a great week. And that's the least of it. That was going on while other things were going down as well.
Oh, mate,
Yeah.
you're absolutely legendary. Look, we've got so many, and Lorraine, what a light of our lives you are. Oh, that's a nice frock too, mate. That's a bit of frock work. What's going on there? That's great. That's a bit of biker work.
Well, the good thing is when you're sitting at a desk, you can't see the pajama pants at the bottom. You just get the top. So
I get that. I get the edgy top, mate, and it looks very edgy. Looks very biker, mate. That's helping me on the Friday. Hard, mate, hard. So, colleagues, look, we've got a lot of requests that have come in the last little bit from Maeve and other colleagues, and Ruth is in. All our favourite people are in. This is tremendous. Good morning, Ruth. We just need to do it. Oh, sorry. Good morning, Ruth.
Good morning.
You're a superstar. So we've got lots of things to talk about. We've got a bit of a focus on book chapters, but also, can I say, PhD chapters this week and how we can figure a chapter in a thesis. So let's all as a family focus on that. We've got the wonderful Gay in, so she can always help us enormously. And Ian, we may want to talk more broadly about book chapters in a publishing framework and scenario for career development. I'm much more ambivalent than I used to be about that, so we might want to talk about that. But look, we do need to start. I saw the Dougster in, so look, we need to just start with the Dougster. Good morning, Doug. Do you want to say hello to your fans around the universe?
Fans. Yes, morning everyone.
Now, brother, how are you going? You're very precious to us. And it's sort of, I wanted to sort of start with a discussion of sort of well-being and how difficult it is to do a PhD full stop and like at any time and like in life, it's tough. Doctor, do you want to sort of, talk about, you've started incredibly well, you're writing incredibly well, and just how you're keeping yourself centered and organized, Dougster?
I think I'm just trying to keep myself busy. But when I have down
Time.
when I sort of crash, because I do crash, things sort of go a bit negative, which is what I have to try and avoid, and that's what happened the other night. And I guess I spilled the beans on about some plans the other day on Facebook, which was a bit silly of me, but
No, Doug, I don't, mate. I don't. For a lot of us that have lived alone, and I've lived alone for a lot of my life as well, in between my multiple marriages, Megan. And I've lived alone in very, very tough circumstances. I'm living alone at the moment. And Doug, it gets really hard, darling. You're on a journey and something throws you a bit. As Kylie and I've talked about, you think life is predictable, and you think work's predictable, and you've got a plan, and people tell you things and you assume they're telling you the truth, don't you, Kylie? And then something happens and that's a lie. And that throws you a bit. And when you're living with other humans, you've got the opportunity to go, gee, I'm upset, or gee, I'm cross, and you're and you eat your own body weight in chocolate and so forth, and that's great. But when you're on your own, and this is what we need to talk about social isolation for a lot of our crew doing a PhD, it gets really tough, Doug. I mean, Megan, you're an expert on this, gorgeous. Do you want to speak to this? Because this is your professional expertise. Morning, Jamie. This is your professional expertise, Megan. Go, Angel.
Yeah, look, life is tough and shit happens to all of us. It doesn't matter how many skills you've got or haven't got, life occurs. It's very difficult for people to reach out to others. It's difficult for people to be vulnerable because we live in a capitalist society that tells us that this is how men are and this is how women are, and you should all be earning money and helping us make more money at the upper echelons. So we fall into that trick rather than going, well, actually, I need some support here and I need somebody to talk to. And because of the way the world works with globalization, I'm really isolated. And social media can be a blessing to many people. I have zero time, but I read your stuff, Doug, and you know, I made responses in my head. I just didn't actually get the time to respond. But you're never alone. We are a community of people who care, but we do give a shit about each other. And we're a beautiful bunch of people, all the same. We're all time deficit because we're doing this extra study or we're looking for jobs or whatever. But Doug, you're no different to the rest of us. Bad things happen to everybody and everybody has moods, like we have emotions. Some people just have different ways of coping with them. But please never think that you're alone because you've got all of us and we do care. So I care about everybody here. I love seeing what everybody's up to.
Absolutely.
And
So-
also reach out, Doug. Like, don't think that you had a low point and you put it out. Let us be there for you, like everyone else is.
Always reach out, Doug. Always reach out. And all of us express those challenges in different ways. Kylie does it via aspirational, inspirational memes. Okay. So
It's for me to read later, but everybody else sees it, but it's so I can go back.
Yeah, so I live my life through Kylie's Facebook posts, and I wish it was more complicated than that. But I find Kylie's posts a documentary for my life. So I can't manage without that. So Kylie clearly, when she's in her incredibly busy life, is throwing these inspirational, aspirational, pain in the butt memes out of her trolley going, bugger this, bugger this, bugger this. And the rest of us are sort of living through your wake, Kylie. But I mean, you handled the Dougster brilliantly, and we should go to Lorraine too, because Lorraine, you know, obviously you've moved through some journeys too, and you were delightful with Doug. What do you want to say to Doug, Lorraine?
Look, Fridays is the highlight of my week. Because this is a family and we are just so supportive of each other. And for every one of us here, we're going to have different ups and downs at different stages of our life and our PhD journey. And when I finish my PhD, I'm still coming back Fridays, by the way. Yes. But yeah, obviously, just to reiterate, for everybody, we're all here for everyone. Sometimes we set ourselves these standards that are just unrealistic, it's unattainable, and we get in that cycle of not being able to achieve it because it's unrealistic and then feeling bad and beating ourselves up with all that negative chatter. So I think for me, what I would say for everyone, if you are getting in that moment where you're not feeling so great, try not to hang on to that and just think, you know what, Friday's coming, I'm going to talk to my family about this and it will pass. It will pass. Put your fingers up and count who are your support people on your hand. Put sticky notes around the house. You're not alone. There are so many services and people that just that momentary where you think, you know what, this isn't worth it. You go, oh, actually, Friday, I've got to see them guys because I'm actually really good for them too. So we need you. We need you as much as you need us. So. Yeah.
And so, Doug, whenever you go, what the hell am I doing this for? Have an answer in your head. That's what I often find in sort of the reggae of emotional ups and downs. It's like, why am I doing this? Doug, you're doing it because you matter, the work matters, and there's a whole bunch of people that need you in our lives, okay? So just put those on weird post-it notes around the house, Doug, and just have a breath, last the 5 minutes, reach out on Facebook again, reach out on anything that's useful, and we will all swarm towards you. Okay, Doug?
Okay.
Better?
Thank you. Yep.
Oh, you're legend.
I'll mute now.
Oh, yeah, darling, you're not on your own. You were never on your own. Okay, we got you, mate. And remember, Kylie is just the leader of all of us, and we just follow Kylie anyway. Kylie, is there a reason existentially why you decided that you would communicate with the world via memes? Did I miss that? So when was that a decision for you to make, Kylie?
Oh, it wasn't a conscious decision. It just thought if I needed, other people probably do too. So, and to give people a chuckle. And I've just shared the best one that I didn't share on Facebook, which is what I've kept thinking this week. This has been my week. Everything as I walk away, just going, yeah, whatever. It's just in the background.
Yeah. And look, what Jamie and I do, Doug, is, and Kyles, you must find this too, and I often have to say this to Kyles, is the world will keep revolving around you. The world doesn't care about us. They will throw us out of the trolley. You've got to pay yourself first, Doug. Do your stuff first, because other people will colonize your time. So you sit in your power, lad, and you achieve from who you are and where you are, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
Doug.
you.
You are the best person in the universe. And look, the work and life balance thing is astounding. And look, we've got beautiful Anvita in the call. Before we go to the construction of a chapter in a thesis, and indeed a book chapter going forward, Anvita, good morning, darling. You've had a bit of a hell of a couple of weeks too. Do you want to say hi to everybody?
Yeah, morning, everyone. Nice to be back here again. Can you hear me?
We certainly can. Excited.
Okay, perfect. Got new earphones. It has been a tough 6 weeks. The last time that we were here, I remember mentioning that I had hurt my leg
Yeah.
and that my partner had COVID, and then I got COVID, and it was bad. And then I got better, and then the leg got slightly better, then I got an eye infection, so I was off again. So it's just been like a slight roller coaster over the last 6 weeks. Jen, who's here, can attest to the fact that I have been going up and down. But I think I'm getting back on track. The Outrider that I listened to definitely helped Tara, as I mentioned, and I went back and started reading through my initial cover letter and proposal that I had submitted at the time of applying for my PhD scholarship. And it brought back the reason why I'm doing this, because I've been finding myself questioning that of late quite a bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think it's okay, because it's just been feeling like every time I make, some progress, there is another limiting factor, and then I go about 10 steps back, and then I'm reevaluating. And I just feel like at every point in time, I'm having to like pick myself up and say, only work on the things that you can control. You can't really, you don't have any control over things that obviously you can't control. But I just think that that's become a slight repetitive cycle in the last 2 months or so, and it is becoming difficult to keep, putting pause, recuperating, coming back and saying, okay, these are the things that you can now control because everything else has changed. So I
Yes.
think just coming towards the final 6-8 months of this journey, it's all just kind of coming together.
Yes.
And I do find myself getting a little overwhelmed when there are changes still happening. And that's only because there are changes that are continuously going on within. Yeah.
And look,
So,
Anvita, it is tough. And as we've talked about this morning, for our colleagues that are not from CDU, we focused a lot this week on the notion of success and making sure you have your rendering of success, because a bunch of randoms and pretenders all around the world, Kylie and I have worked with a lot of these people in the last 20 years. There's a lot of pretenders around that endlessly do this about their career narrative. Look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, look how fantastic I am. And these tiny little bloody things become incredibly significant. And what that does, Anvita, is it sort of knocks us about a bit, because we go, look, I thought I was okay. And then there's this random doing this, and I'm going, oh, well, I thought I was doing a PhD and I thought I was okay. So, Anvita, what we've sort of got to do is block out the pretenders and the spruikers and just keep moving through what we render as success, and I think that might help, mate.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely has. And I think it's just the fact that it's been ongoing sickness and ill health up and down, and then it just takes time to recuperate. And I just feel I'm losing time. But at the same time, I'm impatient to not, rest, but get stuff done because I'm on a timeline. So I think it's just competing priorities, I guess. Do I prioritize health, or am I prioritizing the PhD, or am I rechanging my timeline? And I think that constant shuffle. But I think feeling better, definitely.
Yeah, and Anvita Dalawan, you've raised a great point there. I think so much of the culture is about either or. You know, I think that work and life balance nonsense, I think it lies to us. You know, it's this or this. And actually what we all need to be doing is realizing life is complex, life is granular, and implement clear procedures in our life. So when I feel things are absolutely chaotic, and like 99% of the time they are, I have fundamental principles that I put in place. And for example, for PhD students, the research shows clearly the students that finish and finish quickly and finish well, touch the thesis every day. Doesn't mean you do 10 hours on it, my darling. It just means that you touch it. So it's not prioritize health
Yeah.
or the thesis. It is touch the thesis and focus on wellness. It's not sort of a binarized thing.
Yeah, that's what I ended up doing ultimately, was, you know, resting, but then reading a paper, making a
That's it.
plan, tweaking my timeline, you know, seeing where I'm at, because it is obviously towards that end bit where there's a lot going on.
Yes. Oh, exactly right. And John, you are the ghost of Christmas future for Anvita. And we'll go to Beautiful Maid in 1 second. But John, you are the ghost of Christmas future for Anvita. You're a little bit closer. You're within cooey, as my 95-year-old father would say. What advice would you offer in that difficult point, sort of 6-8 months to go to about 6 weeks to go?
Firstly, and I'd say to Doug, you've also got to have some self-belief. And as you say, exercise is important. There's nothing like going for a good walk or a run to get your mind sorted out. I've had some hard times when you know, I've had no supervision and that sort of thing, and being out doing it externally can be really lonely. And it's really good to find at least someone you can have a coffee with and say something. I'm a little fearful of Facebook and that, and because when I get onto those social media, it's got that habit of leading you somewhere else, and the time can go just like that. Try and get away from that. I mean, Tara's terrific. I wish I'd had some of this in the early times, and that support is here, but you've also got to do it yourself. And let me say a bit more if you can, because the question here was something, what is success? And from what Tara put in some of those suggestions is, okay, for me, in a sense, if I manage to get my thesis in by the date next month, well, by the deadline, maybe that's success, but to me, it's more like relief.
Yeah.
Success will be more felt if it's judged to be a really great sock.
Yeah.
You know, if people see it as good, but yet in some ways getting it in by the 21st of March and still being fit enough to win my races at the Masters Championships the next week, I'll feel just as much success. And for me, success is not so much that big thing. I mean, you've always got that goal there and you feel, oh, that'd be great. But for me, the success comes in the little discoveries along the way. Those original little bits that no one else has seen or pointed out. The ferreting out the information that you want to know about. Oh, shit, yeah. I've got that, recognizing all those serendipitous connections that, oh, that relation knows that. Oh, I can pursue that way. Gee, I found out that person, and finding little achievements along the way. They're the joys. I mean, on the big side or on the little side, discovering something that no one else has seen or seen quite that way, or it can be a personal discovery. Oh, shit, I never realized that before. Yeah. But make those little discoveries count.
I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's creating those granular micro achievements. So, you know, I'm the whiteboard girl. I even have a little whiteboard, and this is what I'm doing today. And at the end of the day, oh, winning. So it's about that sort of granular success. I think we all focus on, you know, this big stuff about, you know, the money and the car and the house and the relationship and stuff. And look, that's just not a viable narrative for many, nay, most people. And so what happens to what is really the majority of the population that's not living that sort of heteronormative, financially successful, you know, family life, it gets challenging because you start to swing about in the space and you don't fit. But let's go to the wonderful Maeve. Go for it, darling. Maeve, talk to us, darling.
Numerous things. I was just typing, so I'm a bit mentally lost while I quickly regroup. Have to start with Doug, so I'll just keep it brief. We'll go back to the chapters. But Doug, personally, and like no one else needs to be agreeing or not agreeing, but personally, I get professional counselling. So I have done through the whole PhD, and universities provide it. They provide it free. If you don't like that counsellor, change to another one. And I've said that before, you know, but I would keep on saying that. And not sometimes if we have mental health issues, the level of what is required to assist is not the same as chatting with a friend. If chatting with a friend is great, but there's a whole lot of people out there and it's just not the same level of what is needed. So that is my personal opinion only. But I get whatever help is available to me, and if it's free, I'm going to take it. So
So well said, Maeve, that there are professionals, and of course we've got professionals on this call. There are professionals that this is what they do for a living.
yeah,
And our job is to be a community in a time that
Yes.
despises community,
yes,
and hold people with care and with decency and with compassion and enable them through the difficult times. And it's funny, I was about to go to Adrian and Josh, so I'll go to the wonderful Adrian. We love you, we miss you. How are you, Adrian?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Good to see everybody. I just wanted to add, going from what everyone said so far, in a moment of desperation and frustration, being so isolated out here in Kiribati with no other students who I can speak with. I mean, this is my only connection to the outside PhD world. So through that process, I got in touch with Maeve and created a Facebook group for people doing creative PhDs. I think it's called Creative PhD Network. There's 3 people at the moment. So if you know anybody, join, and yeah, hopefully we can connect and share our achievements and frustrations. And yeah, but something I wanted to add with Doug, that yeah, look, it's the ups and downs are real, and as everyone's saying, you know, everyone goes through it, but and as Tara says all the time, put it in your work. And for me, that, you know, it doesn't seem to translate sometimes, but then when you're reading an article and you get this inspiration, you just go, holy hell, someone actually wrote that. And this connection to the conversation, which is research, and the academe is, you know, that kind of, I guess, keeps me going and makes me think, wow, like this is what I'm kind of dipping my toe into. And you were doing that as well, and I think we're all doing it. And I just love knowledge and learning, and I'm sure people will say the same stuff about your work. So
yeah, because I love the academic stuff. It's you know, it's what gets me up and keeps me going at night when I should be going to bed and stuff. But I've got like 30 years of psych issues that compound it with, and over a dozen medications that I've got to pop every day, and it just makes things a bit foggy and a bit yuck. So that's what I've got to counterbalance with. So the drive to learn with the emotional baggage and the 30 years of counselling and drugs and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, Adrian, I adore you. Thank you for that beautiful courage. And you remind me every day why we do what we do. So I thank you for that, Adrian. And Doug, mate, you know, my line is always be kind to yourself, Doug. Please be kind to yourself. And look, terrible things happen. Jamie knows I've often talked about when Redhead Steve and I were in Canada, and in an absolutely devastating situation, absolutely debilitating situation. And you're living in temporary accommodation, didn't have our staff. The workplace was a terrible bullying, hour upon hour upon hour upon hour of toxic environment. And Steve had come from very senior professorships in the United Kingdom, and he was being treated like the bottom of a cockie's cage. And I basically just kept him off clinical depression. And as John said, I did it through making sure he exercised for 2 hours a day, so he got the serotonin. But looking back on it now, I should have done a medical intervention, but we were there for 9 months. I managed to scoop us up and get us back to the north of England, probably just in time. But Doug, these are debilitating, tough, isolating environments, Doug. So your courage in taking the meds, understanding the complexity of the meds, and walking with the meds in your life and enabling a PhD, you'll change people's lives, Doug, by what you've just said there, brother. I promise you.
Oh, that's good. I hope so.
You're amazing. And look, we'll go to the legendary Josh. We love you, Josh. Now, Josh, where are you on this? I would follow you anywhere. You're the wisest person I know, Josh.
No, I think everyone else here is very, very wise listening to everyone's advice. I completely agree with everything that's been said. Just to add on to what you were just saying, Tara, that's exactly what I was going to say to Doug, is that the specific challenges that you go through that makes your PhD, your particular version of hell, is going to end up helping other people in the same situation once you're at the other end of it. And that's something really special in itself that you can hold on to. And to Doug and Vita, I guess, like my situation with my PhD was, I started it after the COVID lockdowns happened, and I was, with border restrictions. I had my partner in Taiwan and I was in Australia, so I was separated from my partner, and so I thought, oh, well, I'm going to be lonely anyway, so I'll just go through it. So I was living by myself through that whole thing, and then when PhD supervisors changed, I didn't have an institutional setup, so I get that loneliness that you go through. And I think what Adrian said rings true really well with that, is that if you can read a little bit every day or whenever you can, I think reading is one of the best ways to retouch your thesis in really hard times, because the number of times I've been disconnected from it and the first article I've picked up has had some sort of major bombshells on it, and it to be honest, pretty much every single time, even if it's a crap article, I can read it and I can go, people still don't get the argument that I'm going to put forward, or something. It just shows that you're either original, or, as Adrian said, you can pick up an article and you will all of a sudden see that there is someone else in the world that is having the same thinking as you. And I think that in itself is such a beautiful moment of connection. And you realize that there's other people out there in the world that think about this particular topic with the same passion from the same angle as you. And I think that's also a very important thing. And I was going to say to Anvita as well, it seems a bit counterintuitive, but I think that's a great strategy towards the very end as well. Even though you think you're finishing and adding new stuff on can be a bit crap, but sometimes it has different functions. You can read a bit and you can pick out a nice phrasing or a nice structuring that people use when you're writing. So Tara says, touch the thesis every day. And from my personal experience, if that touching is reading a paper, I think it's a more passive, it's easier to do, and the benefits are huge.
Yes.
When you're going through a rough time. Yeah.
Josh, so brilliantly said. And look, a beautiful linkage to where sort of a bit of our content was going to be today. And we've got the Shell in the house. We love the Shell. We love the Jen. Rowan's in. You are amazing. And look, Josh, the gift of academic life, in fact, I'll say the gift of intellectual life. I'm the only person that's old enough to still use the word intellectual. You don't ever hear it anymore. But the gift of intellectual life is that we dialogue with the dead, and we carry those that have left us with us in our present work. And that's the gift of scholarship. That's profound, because that's our responsibility as people who have still got the gift of breath to move these great scholars forward who have left us. And that, I find that inspiring every single day, right? Every single day. And so therefore, let's talk about, and Maven, a lot of colleagues wanted me to work through this, but I'm conscious for Ian and Josh and of course for Jamie as well, that we talk about the role of book chapters, so how we put our research in book chapters. But let's talk about the PhD chapter. So today is chapter time, and let's try and have a conversation about this. And Julie, obviously this is going straight to the heart of the beautiful piece of work you're doing at the moment that's becoming a chapter that's ending up the heart of the thesis, I think, Jules. So I was given homework this week to think about how do we configure a chapter in a PhD? And the first thing is, I think we just have to recognize our thinking doesn't start with a chapter. It starts with a vibe or an idea. So start with 1,000 words, start with a discussion paper as Doug and I are doing. Here's an idea, write it like yoga until you've stretched, and you've stretched as far as you can. So what happens is chapters come from a little 1,000-word discussion pieces that you align and place together, and you write the connections. The best writing you ever do happens when you connect ideas. Here's an idea, here's another, that's great. Connect them, and that's where the magic happens, Doug. So the first thing is recognize that no human on the planet says, I'm going to write a chapter, and they say, well, let's start and do that. That doesn't happen. It comes from an idea that like a flower opens. And that's what you need to do. Now, so that's the first thing. Don't overwhelm yourself like the chapters aren't coming in one piece. They never do. That's not the point. But what we need to talk about is the role of the chapter in the thesis. Now, this is crucial. Chapters are the vertebrae in the spine of your argument. So it's very important. And I get my students at the start to write a contents page. Of course, it's a mock one. We play with it. Remember, Megan, I did it with you, mate. That I get them right. Here's what I think my sock is, here what I think my argument is, and here's the chapters that I think are the vertebrae that configures the spine of my argument. And it is amazing how often those sort of initial spruiks, this is what I think is going to happen, invariably happen, right? So what you're doing is you're scaffolding the argument for the reader. That's what chapters do. Now, also, the chapters have another role. They have to enliven a sock. So every chapter must connect with your significant original contribution to knowledge. If it's not connecting with your sock, it shouldn't be in the thesis, right? So everything is scaffolding that argument. So Dougster, how we do this is, here's your chapter. And I get my students, my poor students, you reckon you got a tough life, I get my students, and about every paragraph 3 and 4 in their chapter to explain how this chapter contributes to the significant original contribution to knowledge. And I get them to write the words. So this chapter is in this particular location, has this role in the thesis, be avert, be avert. Treat it like my makeup, more is more, overshare. So the role of this chapter in my thesis is boof, 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 boof. The role of this chapter in the development of my sock is boof, 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 avert, clear. Examiners love that. They lose their mind. As Kylie remembers, I used to refer to a certain group of examiners as Chianti readers. So examiners are rarely paid a lot, and many read and examine theses while drinking Chianti. And so they're the Chianti examiners, right? And so there are a couple of Chiantis in, and they're in chapter 3, and they're imagining when they were 24 and having a much happier life. So what this paragraph 3 in each chapter does is they're going, remember, a Chianti reader. Where am I? Oh, here I am. Oh, right. I'm being guided through the thesis. So what your chapter must do is be the tourist guide that moves your examiner through the argument. So don't assume they're going to follow you, because they won't. You need to, what am I doing in this chapter? So hello, everybody. First paragraph, hello, we are here. This is a big area. Second paragraph, the role of this chapter in this thesis is, boom. Paragraph 3, the role of this chapter in the development of my sock is, be avert. Right? And that therefore guides crew through. The examiners love it. We are winning. Now, something I always get students to do in PhD chapters as well is be very clear about what they're not doing. I know that's counterintuitive, particularly for the sciences, Jamie and Josh. I know because it's all about me, 3 data points. Let me show you my data. It's my data. 3 data. Whoa. And it's all about, look at me. I am fantastic. Here is my beautiful data. Do you want to see my table? Right. And so that's what a lot of the quant sciences are about. And so admitting weakness, admitting failure, admitting what you're not doing, I know is counterintuitive. But in a doctoral space, examiners love it. They absolutely love it. It also protects you because you say, this thesis, this is my sock, this is what I am doing. These are the debates that I am not actioning. So Julie, this is terribly important for you. So you're doing this amazing work on merit and women and politics. Now, of course, there's all these debates about merit and leadership and the wider leadership literature. Your thesis is not doing that. So in your introduction, being clear on, now I'm looking at merit and women politicians in particular, but I'm aware there's all this women and leadership literature that is far beyond a PhD. So that's an example where you're saying, this is my wheelhouse. That is somebody else's wheelhouse. I wish them well. Okay. And then examiners go, oh, cool. Because what used to happen in the old days, 10 years ago, is examiners, often inexperienced ones, would say, well, this is not the thesis I expected. And like, dude, it's not your thesis. It's not your thesis. You got to tell them what they're examining, right? You got to tell them what they're examining and be really cool on that. Because what happens is if you go, oh, right, so I know you're looking for, who was I talking with this week about resilience? Oh, our wonderful Jess. So Jess is not using resilience theory from David Chandler. So I love David Chandler. And if I was an examiner, I'd go, where the hell's David Chandler? Right, this resilience is being mentioned. Where the hell's David Chandler? Now, what Jess needs to do for people like me is have a paragraph in her chapter on resilience and say, I note that David Chandler's theorization of resilience in organizational culture is important, but it is not being discussed in this thesis. Now, the gift of that is they know you've read it, that you're not sort of like ignoring it because you haven't read it, you've read it, but it's not relevant for these reasons. So always talk about what you're not doing. And focus good energy, not only on your intro that we've talked about, but the final page of a PhD chapter is also incredibly important. And once more, Doug, remember the Chianti reader? So it's like, okay, what have I just read? What the hell have I just read? Tell them what they've just read. So Phil, this is what you've just read. This is the journey of the thesis. You're with me, brother? Yeah. This is how our SOC has been moved forward by this chapter. Cool. And then the second last paragraph, where are we going next, Phil? And then you take Phil by the hand and you walk him to the next chapter, right? So every PhD chapter has this beautiful intro and this fabulous outro. And the one final point I make, and then Josh, everyone can take over and I'll shut the hell up, is if you're a bit frightened, you go, I'm losing my way through this chapter, use the old headings trick, which is, okay, I've got an idea. I've got an idea. Put a heading over that idea and your chapter may start with 55 headings. So there might be a heading on a paragraph and then another heading in a paragraph. What happens as you start to write the connections between the ideas is you can bleed away, you can remove the headings. All right. So if you've got lots of headings at the start, just to signpost your way through the chapter, that's terrific. Do that. This is a big bit of work, right? But then bleed them away as your argument starts to develop. Oh God, I'll shut up. I get so bored of myself. Josh, talk to me, brother. Rescue me from the universe, Josh.
I was going to say all of that advice helped me pass. So it's great advice. A couple of little things.
Yes.
When you were talking through what your thesis does not cover, I was just going to say that can be really good to keep in mind when you're searching for examiners, or even though if you're not having a decision on deciding them, but looking up people you think would be examining and seeing what they cover. That was a good way for me to figure out what I was putting in that section. And it worked really, really well in my thesis, and it kind of calibrated their expectations quite nicely. And one other small thing is with the chapters, I think, I could be wrong on this is just my opinion, but I wouldn't be too afraid if you think they're going to change. Like I had a moment about 3 weeks out from submission where I actually took my chapter outline and flipped it on its head right at the end. But I think as you're going through it and you get more of a bird's eye view of the thesis, you know what's going to make for the best flow. So I think as you're changing things, don't be too afraid that it's moving, because it's just because you're getting an idea of how the argument's going to move. And then lastly, I was just going to say, I would love to hear Jamie's thoughts and yours too, Tara, on students from the medical sciences that came in with doing a thesis by publication, or the battery hens basically, that are at the end and haven't had this wise advice from the beginning. And so they have these disconnected things and they need to then try and gather it together. I remember a really close friend of mine in the same lab, and she was about 2 weeks out from the deadline, and she just had a bunch of papers, and we sat there with sticky notes and went through and went, all right, what links, what's getting trashed, you know, this sort of thing. And it was messy, but it was probably one of the most important days of her entire candidature. So I'd love to hear from both of you what your advice would be to those students.
Yeah, Josh, mate, there are great strategies for that, and bless you for saying that. I only actually heard at CDU, I mean, I'm very old, mate, and I've only just heard here people use the verb that they're stapling in chapters. Can you imagine? They're stapling in chapters. So we'll talk about that in a sec. We'll go straight to the legendary Ian and then back to Professor Quentin, the physicist in our lives. But Ian, mate, where are you on this? You had a brilliant thesis. Where are you on this, Ian?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, what I did in my thesis, especially towards the end of the writing process, where I had to make sure it was really finally properly good enough to be submitted. And so luckily, I have to say, I discovered Tara's vlogs just at that time when that was all going on, and which basically saved my thesis. The vlogs cover so much ground. The SOC, I realized that I had not addressed that anywhere near explicitly enough. And so I worked hard on really incorporating that in a very clear, obvious sort of way in the introduction, coming back to it through the thesis, and then very strongly returning to it in the introduction. And it was like a thread that bound everything together of why, because one of the things that we do struggle with, and it can affect our mental health, is why are we doing this? Well, we've just been talking about why are we doing this work? Why are we doing this research? And thinking about the SOC, well, that, that reminds you why. And it also, refers back to what we were discussing before about how your work can help other people. It can make a difference in the world, and it's important, but it's quite easy to lose sight of that when you're in the middle of it and you're by yourself and you're just surrounded by chaos, trying to turn it into something coherent. And that was something that I really was so grateful for, actually, just that to keep that in mind, because I didn't get it from my supervisors. I had to reach out somewhere else and get it from there. So I did that. The other thing we talked about was going over what you're not doing and what your thesis is not. And so I was also very conscious of this. And I think this might be something maybe other group members can relate. That comes if you're a bit of an interdisciplinary scholar, because it doesn't necessarily fit what you're doing. So I had quite a lot of feedback from different examiners and people who were giving me feedback on my thesis earlier on. That this is saying this is an ethnographic study of North Korean migrants, and it wasn't. it's not what it was. It didn't really follow the rules of what an ethnography should be, deliberately. So I spent a lot of time repeating that this is not an ethnography, it's a performance analysis, and this is what this means. And nobody else in the examination committee, well, that's not true, not nobody else, but most of the other scholars were not familiar with performance theory and performance studies, and so I had to really spell that out. And then I got some feedback from one of my supervisor, my one that I really loved, saying, okay, so Ian, you've spent a lot of time saying what you're not doing. Can you please now tell us what you are doing? So that was a sort of a gem as well that reminded me that I had to address what I'm not doing, but also not make my thesis about that. And then the other thing was the shortcomings that we talked about, which is critiquing myself and in the conclusion. And so one of the things that I did in my thesis was that I came up with a sort of like a set of 9 guidelines, I called them, for conducting intercultural research in an ethical way, and from a decolonizing, de-Westernizing perspectives, because I was working with Korean research participants and North Korean refugee participants, recognizing my positionality as a white male in a wealthy tertiary institution in Western country, and just thinking about what that meant. And did I follow my own guidelines? And I had to admit in the conclusion that I didn't think I'd been fully successful in. I don't think you can be. It's a huge thing to try to do, and so but that was well received. So yes, and this, I think, Tara, you were specifically talking about in qualitative research, I think, when you were talking about shortcomings. What have I succeeded in doing? What have I not succeeded in doing?
Well said.
So yeah.
Well said,
That's
Ian. I think in qual and quant, acknowledging what went wrong, and of course we lived through the COVID experience too. Examiners lose their minds. It's like, oh, COVID, I had to do an ethics modification. Oh. And so you're showing reflexivity and responsive to contextual environments. So examiners lose their mind. So whenever I get my students to talk about, the contextual issues that were involved, and in overt detail, granular detail, let me overshare the horror. Examiners lose their minds. Please do that. Now we need to go to, good on you, Ian. We'll go to Wonderful Gay, and then Jamie and I might try and clean some of this up a little bit. Beautiful Gay, talk to us, you superstar.
I've already put most of it in the chat, but you wouldn't have seen it, Tara. I wanted to make the point that the structure of a chapter is one of the hardest things to come up with. I discovered with my thesis that once I had the structure right, it flowed. It just came, but it took me quite a while to figure out the structure. I was fortunate in that my chapters could follow the same structure. Not everybody's will be able to do that, but once I got that structure, it just worked. One of the ways to make that structure is to do an outline. And if you don't know what an outline is, because some people do not, it is basically a list of the points that you want to make and the order in which you want to make them, so that it is logical and it flows and it shows your argument. Another way, if you've already started to write your chapter and it's just not working and you can't figure out what's wrong, read the first sentence of every paragraph as if you were reading the whole thing. So you don't worry about the rest of the paragraph. Read the first sentence, read the next paragraph, first sentence, and if it's making sense, great. If it's not, figure out why not.
Absolutely right, Gay. So colleagues, that's the great test. Great editors like Gay apply that. Look at your topic sentence. If you go, this ain't working, look at your topic sentences and see if there's a jump between them, a jump between your argument. Party on. Can I also say I'm a bit with Josh on this too, though, right at the end of my thesis, which was written in 18 months in full-time work, so I had no idea of my own name. But can I say about 2 weeks before I submitted it, I removed an entire chapter. So yes, this is the way it's going to be. This is the contents page. But then, every now and again, something happens. You go, actually, that chapter is is not nested into the SOC. Became a great article, can I say, one of the great site ones I've had, but it wasn't nested in the thesis. Now, Professor Quinton, our favourite physicist to the stars, you've had a hell of a morning, you look exhausted. Now, Jamie, where are you on the configuration of chapters? And look, we've got a lot of colleagues, our wonderful Ruth, for example, is on the call as well. So, and by the way, we should need to say hello to Linda, who's got up in the middle of the night. You beautiful Linda. We love you, Linda. We love you, Linda. Love you, Linda. Now, Jamie, for the crew that are stapling in chapters, I have strategies for stapling chapters. Go for it, Jamie.
I've been thinking about Josh's question. And I guess I'm going to give you the gift of me as a co-supervisor in this answer, because for Josh, I have been a co-supervisor of a large number of Battery Hen graduates. And I was always asked to be the co-supervisor because I could provide the point of view that they were lacking from their main supervisor. So, and I want to touch on multidisciplinarity because most of those students were in nanotechnology, and nanotechnology is about controlling things from a bottom-up point of view, controlling atoms and molecules to make them do your bidding, but making them do your bidding is something you want from a top-down point of view, a holistic perspective. And so in the sciences, in STEM, we tend to focus on training students to think about the details. And the Battery Hen farmer wants all the details, and the details need to be right and they need to be published. But your thesis is actually a holistic document, right? And to step back one step, when I started my PhD, I was a terrible public speaker. I needed practice. I needed to be able to think on my feet and not become paralytic because I'm so uncomfortable I can't think straight, right? And it took practice and it took effort, but it also took some training that I didn't get from STEM, which was the first rule of communication, know your audience, right? So you're writing a thesis, know your audience. Your audience comes in two forms. One is the examiner and the other is the legacy of whatever your thesis is going to be left to other researchers in your area. So the role that I play in supervising students in STEM, where I actually think I'm quite good at the holistic perspective, when all of these comments about structure and guiding the reader and so forth, it's all a top-down holistic perspective. So the thing to remember is your thesis, and this is what I say to my students, whether it's a chapter, whether it's a paragraph, remember you're telling a story. If you're giving a presentation, you're telling a story. You need to know your audience, and in the case of a thesis, it's not just a story, but it's a story with evidence. So you need to get your evidence right. That's the bottom-up stuff. But the story itself is the top-down holistic perspective, right? From a multidisciplinary point of view, and thank you, Josh, for asking this question, because I'm in the middle of writing a dissertation at the moment, and I'm struggling myself with it because I'm so busy doing other things. You've reminded me in answering what I'm about to tell you is something I needed to hear today. So I'm now telling myself something I need to hear. In telling the story, and for multidisciplinary people like Julie, you have to demonstrate your disciplinary literacy across the disciplines, but only do so in a sufficient manner that you take the reader through the disciplinary literacy they need to be able to read and appreciate the evidence and the data and the story that you're configuring. And that's how you know how much is enough. That's how do I know how much is enough? The answer is you need to tell the reader just enough to be able to understand the rest of the story and the SOC and how it's all relevant, but don't flesh out details for the sake of trying to demonstrate I can produce a ton of stuff that may not be relevant, right? So I think that's the short version of the answer to that question. When people are stapling stuff together, the holistic perspective is the thing that needs to be put in place, yes, right? Don't rely on the examiner or the reader to read the papers, do all the processing. Remember a few weeks ago, I said the examiner doesn't want to think. You give them the thinking, take them on the journey. Hopefully they're drinking before they have to do the thinking and before they read your thesis, but certainly not as a consequence of reading your thesis, right? And I think that's the most sage advice I can give all of you in anything I tell you.
I think my life's just changed. And Vita's head nearly left her neck at certain points during that conversation. And look, colleagues, I'll just sort of finish off, but Jamie, I'm going to need your help, and Josh, I'll access you as well, colleagues, we've got a series of problems when peer review is rendered equivalent to examination of a doctorate. You've heard me say this thousands of times. They're both of value, but they're both very different things. Linda, we talked about this last week. So peer review is excellent. Peer review, I mean, I've written what, 384 refereed articles, right? So I'm not anti-peer review. I love peer review. But you might have, 600 outputs by the end of your career, but you've only got one PhD. And examination and peer review are different things. And as Jamie said, that's the challenge you've got if you go, I've written these 5 articles, I'm just going to staple them into the thesis and hope that the examiner will follow me, right? The other problems, Jamie, I better just log, is the other problem we've got is now that's being called, and this is wrong, by the way, but now this is being called self-plagiarism. So if you take an article and you put it into a thesis, that can be, it's wrong, but it can be configured self-plagiarism. So you need to self-cite to stop that all happening, and that's easy to do. You can do that. But how I handle it is I unpick the staple. So you've got your article that's been peer-reviewed, rock and roll, self-cited, an earlier version of this article appeared in, boom, 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 and then reorganize your intro and your outro exactly as we talked about today. So what are we doing in this thesis? What are we doing in this chapter? What's the SOC? So you can have, 90% of it is your refereed article, but your intro and your outro, your first couple of pages, your last couple of pages change. Sorry, Jamie, go, brother.
I was just going to say, can I take this full circle back to the comment that John made about what success looks like?
Hell yeah.
So, you've got, you'll have students with different points of view, right? So for Doug, always remember that you need to define what success looks like. Don't let others define it for you. And John's comment about you take from this what you want to take from it, right? So with regard to the thesis, if you're the kind of person who just wants the PhD over and you don't care what the final thesis looks like, I wish you all the best. That's not me at all. I wanted my thesis to be something I was proud of, because I assumed or I intended I was going to be an academic, and I wanted to, hand on heart, hand it to others and say, it's my thesis, like it or not, it's up to you, but I'm actually proud of how I put this together. And it's something that I took away as a success. So the thesis in and of itself, without the outcome, without the qualification, without the testament, that was a success for me and a personal success. And that's what it comes down to, right? When it comes to the thesis and what it finally looks like, the individual has to, I hope, walk away with it in a state that they're happy with.
Oh, yeah. I think that's unbelievable. Josh, have you got any final commentary for our quant crew, our harder science crew, particularly in the medical sciences, and how we create that smoothness that links in with our notion of success, Josh?
I was just going to say, Jamie, I'm going to come back to this recording probably many times in the future. Now, I really hope I have the privilege to be an associate supervisor to some battery hens in the future. And I think, given the sociology of everything, probably will happen a lot. Yeah, yeah. So I think it was massive advice. I think for people in the science crew, my best friend through the PhD, we used to always say to each other the whole way through, wouldn't it be great if we could just tell this story as it unfolded with all the mess in it? And we used to say that to each other all the time. And by the time I got to the end of it and everything had blown up, I did that. And it made the thesis what it was, and it made it in a way that I was proud of it. And so I think for anyone in the science crew, be vulnerable with the thesis. I think that's the big difference with peer review. It doesn't need to be this sterile, beautiful thing. It's
confidence aspect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it does go to that idea of valuing the failure, right? Because the thesis itself, if you can articulate to the examiner the strengths and the limitations, if you can describe where it failed, and you can demonstrate or articulate, you understand why it failed, it's so much a stronger demonstration of your expertise and your ability than just publishing the successful stuff. The other thing too is if you staple a bunch of papers together, unless you're the only author on every single one of those papers, the examiner has to go, I'm trying to assess the person's capacity here as a PhD graduate. How do I do that? And in fact, the rest of it, the contextual statement, is where they're going to look to get that assessment, right?
And Jamie and I both know people that when the caliber of the writing in the articles was that much higher than the caliber of the writing in the introduction and the conclusion, the examiner balked it as a research integrity breach. Hashtag no pressure. Colleagues, this has been, I never know where you're going to take me. I am moved. I am so inspired by you all. I almost can't sort of think straight. Can I say also thank you to everyone who's put in those random references from the book that I published this week, Pernicious PhD Supervisor. You know your book's had some success when people are just throwing the model out there and now the battery hens become a thing. I thank you so much for that. And I need to just do one final shout out. I've received, I just need all of this wonderful family, this group of people to know this. I've received 22 emails this week and direct messages on Twitter from people who watch these recordings on Saturday morning. They're shy, they're not quite ready to come in yet, but they treat all of you like you're their family and you're with them on the journey. So I hope you know that for all our asynchronous crew out there who haven't quite got the courage like beautiful Linda to wake up in the middle of the night and join us, we see you, we care about you, you are part of our hood, and we wish you every success. And any week you feel like it, hashtag no pressure, you come on in and we'll send all our love to you synchronously. Take care, colleagues. See many of you in Write Club. Have a lovely week. Bye-bye. Thank you, colleagues. What an hour. Wow. Thank you.